The mining colony of Karth-9 was one of the worst places a human could live in the outer galaxy. The skies were always dark because giant factory towers covered the atmosphere with smoke. Broken cargo ships filled the old spaceport. Tired workers moved through the streets every day with empty eyes and exhausted faces. Nobody came to Karth-9 unless they had no other choice. And for the young human mechanic named Ethan Cole, there was nowhere else left to go. 3 years earlier, Ethan had lost everything during a mining tunnel collapse. His father and older brother were killed deep underground when unstable crystal reactors exploded beneath the colony. After that day, Ethan spent every hour trying to survive alone. He repaired broken engines during the day. He fixed damaged drones during the night. Sometimes he even slept inside repair garages because he could not afford a real apartment. But no matter how hard Ethan worked, the debts kept growing. Karth-9 was designed to keep poor workers trapped forever. One cold evening, Ethan walked through the crowded market district carrying a small metal toolbox. Rain mixed with ash fell from the polluted sky. Neon signs flickered above dirty streets while alien traders shouted at customers from every direction. Ethan stopped in front of a tiny food stand and checked the few credits remaining on his wrist scanner. Barely enough for one meal, the old vendor looked at Ethan and sighed. "Still trying to escape this place?" the man asked quietly. Ethan gave a tired smile. "One day." The vendor handed him a small bowl of synthetic noodles. "People here stop dreaming after a while," the old man said. "Maybe you're different." Ethan wanted to believe that, but deep inside, hope was becoming harder to hold on to. After finishing the cheap meal, Ethan returned to the repair district near the lower docks. That was where old ships were abandoned when owners could no longer pay station taxes. Most of the ships looked dead. Burned hulls, broken engines, missing parts, but one massive cargo spaceship immediately caught Ethan's attention. The ship stood alone in the far corner of the dockyard under flickering red lights. Its dark metal hull was covered with scratches and old battle damage. Half the engine systems looked destroyed, yet something about the ship felt strange. It was too clean, not outside, inside. Ethan noticed fresh steam escaping from a side vent. That made no sense. The ship had supposedly been abandoned for years. Curious, Ethan walked closer until a station worker suddenly grabbed his arm. "Don't touch that ship," the nervous worker whispered. Ethan frowned. "Why?" The worker looked around carefully before speaking again. "People hear things inside at night." Ethan laughed softly. "Probably scavengers." The worker shook his head immediately. "No, heavy footsteps, doors opening by themselves." Some workers even saw shadows moving through the windows. Ethan stared back at the giant ship. Rumors did not scare him anymore. Life on Karth-9 was already terrifying enough. "Who owns it now?" Ethan asked. "Nobody," the worker replied. "The station seized it after the previous owners disappeared." That single sentence changed everything in Ethan's mind. No owner meant a cheap price. Very cheap. An hour later, Ethan stood inside the station office speaking with an annoyed dock manager. "Seriously want that death trap?" the manager asked. Ethan nodded. "It still flies." "Barely. It's enough." The manager leaned back in his chair and laughed. "You humans are insane." Maybe he was right, but Ethan did not care anymore. That ship represented freedom. For the first time in years, Ethan saw a possible way out of Karth-9. After signing the final documents, the dock manager handed Ethan a small access device. "Congratulations," he said sarcastically. "The cursed ship is yours." Late that night, Ethan finally approached the giant cargo ship alone. The station lights behind him slowly faded while silence filled the empty docking sector. Cold air moved through the dark hallway leading toward the ship entrance. The giant loading ramp opened with a loud metallic groan. Dust floated through the air inside. Ethan activated a small flashlight and stepped carefully into the darkness. The interior looked ancient. Long metal corridors stretched deep into the ship. Emergency lights blinked weakly above the ceiling. Old cargo containers stood stacked beside the walls like forgotten graves. But then Ethan noticed something strange. The floor was clean, not perfectly clean, but cleaner than an abandoned ship should be. Someone had walked here recently. Ethan slowly moved deeper inside the ship. His flashlight passed over giant claw marks on the walls. Then he found something even stranger. A metal food container, still warm. Ethan froze immediately. Someone was definitely here. Suddenly, thud. A heavy sound echoed somewhere above him. Ethan quickly looked up toward the dark upper hallway. Silence returned again. Then another sound came. Thud, thud, heavy footsteps, far too heavy to belong to a normal human. Ethan's breathing slowed. Every survival instinct inside him screamed to run. But before he could move, a giant metal door at the end of the corridor slowly opened by itself. Cold air rushed through the hallway. And then a massive figure stepped out of the darkness. The alien woman was enormous, nearly 8 feet tall. Long silver-white hair flowed across dark, armored clothing. Glowing golden eyes locked directly onto Ethan's terrified face. Her powerful body looked strong enough to tear apart steel doors with bare hands. Behind her, two more giant alien women appeared silently from the shadows. One had glowing blue markings across her skin. The other carried a massive energy blade on her back. All three stared at Ethan without speaking. The human mechanic could barely breathe. Then the tallest alien woman slowly walked closer. Her glowing eyes widened with emotion. And finally, she whispered softly, "You came back to us, husband." Ethan stood frozen in the middle of the dark corridor while the three giant alien women surrounded him silently. Nothing inside his mind made sense anymore. The cold metal floor beneath his boots suddenly felt unsteady. His heartbeat pounded so loudly that it almost covered the sound of the ship engines humming deep inside the walls. "Husband?" Ethan repeated nervously. The tallest alien woman stepped closer. Up close, she looked even more terrifying. Her shoulders were broader than most human soldiers, and glowing golden patterns moved slowly across her pale silver skin like living light. But strangely, her eyes did not look dangerous anymore. They looked emotional, almost relieved. "You truly returned," she whispered softly. Ethan quickly raised both hands. "No, wait, I think you made a mistake." The three alien women exchanged confused looks with each other. The smallest one tilted her head slightly. Long white hair fell over her shoulder while blue glowing markings shimmered gently across her neck. "Mistake?" she asked quietly. "I'm not your husband," Ethan explained quickly. "I just bought this ship today." The corridor suddenly became silent. The emotional warmth in the alien women's faces slowly disappeared. The tallest woman stared directly into Ethan's eyes for several long seconds. Then she asked one strange question. "What is your family name, human?" "Cole," Ethan answered carefully. "Ethan Cole." The moment those words left his mouth, all three alien women froze completely. Shock spread across their faces. The second woman, the one carrying the giant energy blade, suddenly stepped forward with wide eyes. "Cole," she whispered. "That name cannot be possible," the smallest alien woman said nervously. Ethan's fear slowly returned. "What's going on here?" he asked. The tallest alien woman looked shaken for the first time, then slowly. She reached into a small metal container attached to her armor and pulled out an old damaged object. A human military badge. Ethan's eyes widened immediately. Because the name written on the badge was familiar. Captain Daniel Cole. Ethan almost stopped breathing. "That's impossible," he whispered. Daniel Cole was Ethan's uncle. Years ago, Daniel had disappeared during a deep space exploration mission near forbidden sectors. The military declared him dead after his ship vanished without any signal. Ethan slowly looked back at the alien women. "Where did you get that?" he asked quietly. The tallest woman answered carefully. "He saved our lives." The corridor became completely silent again. Then the alien women finally introduced themselves. The tallest was Lyra. The warrior carrying the giant energy blade was Vexa, and the smallest alien woman with glowing blue markings was Saris. For the next hour, Ethan listened to a story so unbelievable that part of him still thought he was dreaming. 7 years earlier, the three sisters had escaped from the Velkari Empire, one of the most feared warrior civilizations in the galaxy. The Velkari were known for strength, conquest, and brutal royal traditions. Royal daughters were never allowed to choose their own lives. Their marriages were arranged for political power. Their futures were controlled from birth, but Lyra, Vexa, and Saris refused to obey, so they escaped. During their escape, their royal ship was attacked near dead space territory. Most of their crew died during the battle. Their damaged ship drifted through empty space for weeks before Captain Daniel Cole discovered them. The human explorer secretly protected the sisters instead of turning them over to the Empire. "He treated us like people," Saris said softly, "not weapons." Ethan noticed real emotion in her glowing eyes. Lyra continued the story. "Your uncle hid us inside this cargo ship while he searched for a safe world." "But something went wrong," Vexa said darkly. A second attack destroyed Daniel Cole's exploration vessel. Before leaving for the final repair mission, Daniel promised he would return for them, but he never came back. Only the old cargo ship survived. For 7 years, the sisters remained hidden inside the abandoned vessel while royal hunters searched the galaxy for them. Ethan slowly looked around the giant dark corridor. "You stayed trapped here this entire time." "Had no choice," Lyra answered quietly. Something painful moved behind her golden eyes. "The Empire executes runaway royals." Ethan finally understood why they hid themselves, but one mystery still remained. "That still doesn't explain why you called me husband." The three sisters exchanged nervous looks again. Saris slowly stepped forward. "In Velkari history," she explained softly, "there is an ancient biological bond connected to human genetics." Ethan blinked in confusion. What? Our species is extremely powerful, Vexa explained. Too powerful, over generations our people became violent and unstable. But humans calm the bond, Lyra continued. Ancient records describe humans as compatible soul partners for Velkari royals. Ethan stared at them in disbelief. You're saying your empire wants human husbands? Not husbands, Vexa corrected coldly. Breeding tools. The room suddenly became uncomfortable. But Captain Daniel Cole protected us instead, Saris whispered. Before leaving, he gave us your family symbol and said one day another Cole would come. Ethan looked down at the old military badge again. His uncle had somehow connected him to these women years before his death. None of this felt real. Before Ethan could speak again, a loud warning alarm suddenly exploded across the entire ship. Red emergency lights flashed violently through the corridor. Warning, unauthorized scanning detected. Warning, Royal VELKARI signal found. The faces of the three alien sisters instantly changed. Fear appeared for the first time. Vexa immediately grabbed the giant energy blade from her back. They found us, she said coldly. Ethan's stomach dropped. Outside the ship, massive shadows slowly moved across the station windows. Warships, huge black warships, and there were dozens of them. The giant black warships surrounded Karth 9 like predators closing in on wounded prey. Outside the station windows, hundreds of red lights moved through the darkness of space. Massive Velkari destroyers blocked every escape route around the colony while smaller attack ships scanned every dock sector one by one. Inside the cargo ship, emergency alarms echoed through the corridors. Ethan's hands shook slightly as he stared at the giant holographic radar screen near the control room. There are too many of them, he whispered. Vexa activated several hidden weapon systems across the ship while Lyra studied the incoming fleet movements carefully. Sarah stood beside the communication console trying to block tracking signals. The three alien sisters moved with military precision, like warriors preparing for war, but Ethan noticed something else. Fear, real fear. Even these powerful alien women were terrified of the Empire hunting them. The station will hand us over, Lyra said quietly. Karth 9 fears the Velkari Empire. Ethan already knew she was right. Nobody on the colony would risk angering one of the strongest civilizations in the galaxy. Suddenly, the station communication network activated above the control panel. A nervous station officer appeared on the hologram screen. All unidentified vessels inside Dock Sector 9 must surrender immediately, the officer announced shakily. Failure to comply will result in military action. Vexa laughed coldly. They sound terrified. They should be, Lyra answered. Then the entire ship suddenly shook violently. Boom, dust fell from the ceiling. Ethan nearly lost balance. That was a warning shot, Sarah said quietly. Another explosion echoed outside moments later. The Velkari fleet was growing impatient. Ethan looked around the old control room. Broken systems, weak shields, half-functioning engines. This ship could barely survive normal travel. Now they were expected to escape an entire royal fleet. Impossible. We can't outrun them, Ethan admitted. Lyra slowly looked toward him. Then we hide. Before Ethan could ask what she meant, Vexa grabbed his shoulder suddenly. Move! The warrior woman pulled Ethan through the corridor as heavy metallic sounds echoed outside the docking sector. The station had already begun sealing nearby hallways. Sarah stayed behind temporarily to erase their digital records. Ethan struggled to keep up with Vexa's speed. You know, he said nervously, normal people usually explain plans before dragging somebody through a ship. Vexa glanced down at him briefly. Normal people are usually dead. That answer did not help his stress. They finally reached the lower engineering sector deep inside the cargo vessel. Ethan immediately noticed massive hidden modifications beneath the ship's old systems, secret engines, illegal weapons, military-grade shield cores. The abandoned cargo ship was far more dangerous than it appeared. You've been upgrading the ship this whole time? Ethan asked. Lyra nodded. We prepared for this day. Before Ethan could respond, loud metallic impacts suddenly echoed above them. Clang, 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 enemy boarding teams. Saris rushed into the engineering room moments later. They're entering the station docks already. Vexa smiled coldly while activating her glowing energy blade. Finally, the giant warrior woman looked excited. Good, she said. Ethan stared at her in disbelief. Good. But before anybody could answer, the cargo ship lights suddenly shut off completely. Darkness swallowed the room. Only the glowing blue emergency lights remained active. Then came the sound, heavy footsteps, dozens of them, moving through the upper corridors. Ethan's breathing became shallow. The Velkari soldiers had boarded the ship. Lyra quickly grabbed Ethan's arm and pulled him behind one of the engine reactors. No matter what happens, she whispered softly, stay hidden. For the first time since meeting the alien women, Ethan saw genuine worry in her eyes, not for herself, for him. A loud explosion suddenly destroyed the engineering door. Metal pieces flew across the room while armored Velkari soldiers stormed inside carrying glowing plasma rifles. They were enormous, even larger than the sisters. Black battle armor covered their bodies while glowing red symbols burned across their helmets. The lead commander immediately pointed toward Lyra. "By order of the Emperor," the soldier announced coldly, "the royal fugitives will surrender now." Vexa stepped forward slowly, her giant energy blade ignited with bright blue light. "I was hoping you would say that." The battle exploded instantly. Ethan had never seen combat like this before. Vexa moved like a monster. Her glowing blade sliced through heavy armor as sparks and plasma bursts filled the engineering room. One soldier crashed through a metal wall after Lyra struck him hard enough to bend steel. Ceres used strange energy powers Ethan could barely understand. Blue glowing waves burst from her hands, throwing enemies across the corridor like broken machines. The sisters fought with terrifying power, but more soldiers kept entering. Too many. Ethan looked around desperately. Then he noticed something important. The enemy commander was targeting the ship's reactor core. "They're trying to disable the engines." Ethan shouted. Lyra immediately understood. "If the reactor shuts down, we're trapped." Without thinking, Ethan ran toward the damaged control systems while plasma fire exploded around him. His mechanic instincts activated automatically despite the chaos. The reactor controls were overloaded. Power lines burned beneath the panels. If the systems failed now, everybody inside the ship would die. Ethan quickly opened the damaged wiring panels and began reconnecting circuits manually. Sweat rolled down his face while explosions shook the room. A plasma shot suddenly hit the wall beside him. One enemy soldier had spotted him. The armored warrior raised his weapon directly toward Ethan's head. For one terrifying second, Ethan thought he was dead. But then Vexa appeared instantly. The giant alien warrior grabbed the soldier with one hand and slammed him violently into the reactor wall hard enough to crack the armor. Her glowing eyes burned with fury. "No one touches him." Something about her voice made even the remaining soldiers hesitate. Then the entire ship suddenly roared to life again. The engines were active. Ethan had restored power. Lyra immediately rushed toward the command console. "We have one escape route," she shouted, "but it leads directly into the asteroid graveyard." Vexa smiled dangerously. "Perfect." Outside the station, the old cargo ship suddenly blasted through the docking sector while hundreds of enemy fighters chased behind them. Straight ahead waited the deadliest asteroid field in the outer systems, and Ethan realized something horrifying. This was only the beginning. The old cargo ship flew into the asteroid graveyard at full speed while hundreds of enemy fighters chased behind them. Massive rocks drifted through the darkness like floating mountains. Some asteroids were larger than cities. Others spun wildly through space after ancient collisions. Broken shipwrecks floated everywhere inside the graveyard, creating a giant maze of metal and stone. Inside the control room, warning alarms screamed nonstop. "Collision risk detected." "Shield failure at 30%. "Multiple enemy lock-ons detected." Ethan gripped the damaged control panel tightly while sweat rolled down his face. "This ship is going to explode," he said nervously. Vexa looked completely calm. "Not before the enemy does." The giant warrior woman controlled the ship weapons while Ceres adjusted navigation paths through the dangerous asteroid field. Lyra stood behind Ethan studying the enemy fleet carefully. Even after hours of escaping and fighting, the sisters still looked powerful. But Ethan could see exhaustion slowly appearing in their faces. They had spent years running, years hiding, and now an entire empire was hunting them again. Suddenly, a massive explosion lit up the darkness behind the ship. One enemy fighter smashed directly into an asteroid while trying to follow too closely. Vexa smiled slightly. One less problem. But three more fighters immediately appeared beside them. Bright plasma fire blasted across the cargo ship's shields. The old vessel shook violently while sparks exploded from the ceiling. Ethan almost lost balance again. "We can't survive much more damage," he shouted. Lyra suddenly pointed toward a narrow opening between two giant asteroids. "There," she ordered. Ceres looked shocked. "That path is too small. We don't have another choice." Ethan stared at the tiny gap ahead. It looked impossible. The old cargo ship was far too large to fit safely between the spinning asteroids. "You're joking," Ethan whispered. But Lyra grabbed the controls herself. Then the giant alien woman accelerated directly toward the deadly opening. The ship entered the narrow passage at terrifying speed. Metal screamed against rock as both sides nearly scraped the asteroid walls. Warning lights flashed violently throughout the control room. Behind them, enemy fighters tried following the same route. Two instantly exploded after smashing into rotating debris. Another disappeared beneath falling rock fragments. Asteroid graveyard itself became their weapon. Finally, the cargo ship escaped into a quieter section of space hidden deep inside the giant field. For the first time in hours, silence returned. Ethan leaned back against the wall, breathing heavily. We survived. But nobody else looked relieved, because Lyra was staring silently at a nearby radar screen. Ethan slowly walked closer, then his stomach dropped. More Velkari warships were entering the asteroid field, not dozens this time, hundreds. The Emperor truly wants us dead, Saris whispered quietly. Vexa crossed her arms. Or he wants the human. The room became silent. Ethan looked toward the three sisters. Why am I suddenly so important? Lyra hesitated for several seconds before answering. Then she finally spoke honestly. In the Velkari Empire, royal bloodlines are sacred. Ancient genetic bonds are extremely rare. She looked directly into Ethan's eyes. You are the first compatible human ever found by the royal family. Ethan blinked slowly. That sounds bad. It is worse than bad, Vexa said coldly. If the Empire controls you, they control future royal bloodlines. Suddenly, Ethan understood everything. This was never only about runaway princesses. The Empire saw him as something valuable, something dangerous, something worth killing for. Before Ethan could process the thought completely, Saris suddenly collapsed against the wall. Saris. Lyra rushed forward instantly. Ethan quickly noticed blood running down Saris's side beneath her damaged armor. She had been injured during the battle. I'm fine, Saris whispered weakly, but she was clearly lying. Ethan immediately moved beside her and carefully examined the wound. Deep plasma burns covered part of her ribs. She needs treatment now, Ethan said seriously. The sisters exchanged worried looks. Our medical systems were destroyed years ago, Lyra admitted quietly. Ethan looked around the damaged ship. Then his mechanic instincts activated again. Maybe not all of them. For the next hour, Ethan worked non-stop inside the old medical bay trying to repair ancient equipment. Broken wires and damaged circuits covered the floor while emergency lights flickered above him. Finally, the scanner activated, weakly, but enough. Saris sat quietly on the medical table while Ethan treated the plasma wound carefully. The smaller alien woman watched him silently the entire time. You are different from other humans, she said softly. Ethan laughed tiredly. You've met many humans? No, Saris answered. Only you. Something about her voice felt strangely emotional. Ethan avoided eye contact and focused on repairing the medical injector. But then Saris gently touched his wrist. You risk your life for us even after learning the truth. Ethan paused. Outside the medical room window, endless asteroids drifted silently through space. Finally, he answered honestly. Because nobody ever risked their life for me before. Saris's glowing eyes softened immediately. For the first time since childhood, Ethan did not feel completely alone anymore. Suddenly, the ship alarms activated again. Warning, unknown ship approaching. Vexa's voice echoed through the communication system. Everyone to the control room, now. Moments later, Ethan entered the bridge beside Lyra and Saris. A single enormous warship slowly emerged from the darkness outside. Unlike the others, this vessel was covered in golden armor. Royal symbols burned across the massive hull like fire. Even Vexa looked tense now. Then a face appeared on the hologram screen. An older Velkari male wearing black royal armor stared directly at them with cold silver eyes. The Emperor himself. His voice filled the control room like thunder. Daughters, he said slowly, your rebellion ends today. Then his eyes moved toward Ethan. The Emperor's expression darkened instantly. So, he whispered coldly, the human truly exists. Ethan felt fear crawl through his chest, but the Emperor's next words were even worse. Surrender the human now, or I will erase every human colony near this sector. Silence filled the control room after the Emperor's threat. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Outside the ship windows, the giant golden warship floated between the asteroids like a god of destruction. Hundreds of Velkari destroyers surrounded the area behind it, their weapons glowing in the darkness of space. Ethan stared at the Emperor's cold face on the hologram screen. Millions of humans were being threatened because of him. The poor mechanic from Carth 9 suddenly felt the weight of entire worlds on his shoulders. Lyra stepped forward first. You would murder innocent colonies for politics? She asked coldly. The Emperor showed no emotion. The human belongs to the Empire. He belongs to nobody, Vexa growled. For the first time, anger appeared in the Emperor's silver eyes. You abandoned your bloodline, he said. You betrayed your empire for a weak species. Saris slowly moved beside Ethan. They are not weak, she whispered. The Emperor ignored her completely. His attention remained fixed on Ethan. You have one chance, human, he announced. Surrender peacefully and the colonies will survive. Ethan's hands tightened slowly. Fear crawled through his body, not fear for himself, fear for innocent people. He remembered the mining colony, the workers, the children, the poor families trapped in dangerous systems just like Carth 9. If war started, millions would die. The Emperor knew exactly how to break him. But before Ethan could answer, Lyra suddenly deactivated the communication screen. The Emperor's face vanished instantly. Vexa looked shocked. "You refused him directly?" Lyra turned toward Ethan. "We will not sacrifice you." Ethan stared at the three giant alien women standing beside him. Only days ago they were strangers. Now they were risking entire fleets to protect him. Something inside Ethan changed at that moment. For years he survived alone. Nobody ever stood beside him before. Nobody ever fought for him, but these women did, and suddenly he wanted to fight for them too. "We can't keep running forever," Ethan said quietly. Vexa crossed her arms. "Agreed. But we also can't defeat that fleet directly," Saris added nervously. Ethan looked toward the giant asteroid field outside. Then an idea slowly formed inside his mind. Dangerous, desperate, possibly suicidal, but it could work. "The asteroid graveyard," Ethan whispered. Lyra looked toward him immediately. "What about it?" Ethan moved quickly toward the navigation map. "This place is filled with abandoned mining stations, broken reactors, and dead warships." Understanding slowly appeared in Vex's eyes. "You want to turn the graveyard into a bomb?" Ethan nodded. "If we overload the old reactor cores hidden inside the asteroids, the entire field becomes a giant trap." Saris looked uncertain. "The explosion would destroy everything here." "Exactly," Ethan answered. Hours later, the old cargo ship moved silently through the asteroid field while the Velkari fleet followed carefully behind. Ethan worked non-stop beside the engineering systems preparing the overloaded reactor signals. Sweat covered his face while warning alarms blinked across every screen. One mistake would kill all of them instantly. Meanwhile, Lyra, Vexa, and Saris prepared the ship for final combat. Nobody said it directly, but they all understood something. This battle could be their last. As the fleet entered deeper into the graveyard, the Emperor's voice suddenly returned across open channels. "You cannot escape destiny forever." Ethan ignored him and continued working. More reactor signals activated one by one throughout the asteroid field. 10, 20, 30. A chain reaction strong enough to destroy entire fleets. Then suddenly warning, enemy boarding SHIPS approaching. Vexa smiled coldly while igniting her energy blade. Finally. Small attack vessels slammed against the cargo ship moments later. Explosions shook the corridors while enemy soldiers stormed inside again. This time the battle became even more brutal. The sisters fought like legends from ancient war stories. Vexa sliced through armored soldiers with terrifying speed. Lyra crushed enemies powerful enough to destroy metal doors. Saris unleashed glowing energy waves that threw entire groups across the corridors, but the enemy numbers never stopped coming. Ethan finished the final reactor sequence while plasma fire echoed through the ship. Then he heard something terrible behind him. Saris screamed. Ethan turned instantly. One enemy commander had stabbed Saris through the side with an energy spear. Time almost stopped. The smaller alien woman collapsed against the wall while blue blood spread across the floor. "SERIS!" Lyra shouted. Rage exploded inside Vexa like fire. The giant warrior attacked with terrifying fury, destroying everything around her. But Ethan rushed directly towards Saris. Her breathing was weak now, glowing tears rolled down her face. "We failed," she whispered painfully. "No," Ethan said immediately. "You didn't." Outside the ship windows, the Emperor's fleet moved deeper into the center of the asteroid graveyard, exactly where Ethan wanted them. The mechanic looked toward the reactor controls one final time, then he activated the sequence. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the asteroid field exploded. Massive chains of fire erupted through space as hidden reactor cores detonated one after another. Entire asteroids shattered apart while shockwaves ripped through the Velkari fleet. Destroyers vanished inside nuclear firestorms. Enemy fighters disappeared beneath collapsing debris. Even the Emperor's golden warship lost power after multiple explosions struck its shields. Chaos consumed the battlefield. Inside the cargo ship, Ethan struggled to keep control while debris smashed against the hull from every direction. "We need to leave now," Lyra shouted. The damaged cargo ship accelerated through the collapsing asteroid field while the surviving enemy fleet scattered in panic. Behind them, the Emperor's massive flagship drifted helplessly through burning wreckage. For the first time in years, the Velkari Empire had lost. Hours later, silence finally returned. The old cargo ship floated near the edge of peaceful space while stars glowed softly outside the windows. Inside the medical room, Sarah slowly opened her eyes. She survived. Ethan sat quietly beside her while Lyra and Vexa stood nearby. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Lyra finally stepped forward. The giant alien woman lowered herself onto one knee before Ethan. Vexa and Saris followed immediately after. Ethan looked confused. "What are you doing?" Lyra smiled softly for the first time. "In Velkari tradition," she whispered, "warriors kneel only before family." Then she gently took Ethan's hand. "You are no longer alone, husband."